Welcome to Tariffs, Trade, and What's Next. Thank you for joining this very exciting and interesting conversation today. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Kristen Classy-Zumo, and I am an apparel advisor at Circana, where we help brands and retailers make sense of consumer behavior, category performance, and the market forces shaping the apparel and retail industry. I'm thrilled to be here with Beth Hughes, Vice President of Trade and Customs Policy at AAFA. Now, today, we're going to unpack the increasingly complex tariffs and trade landscape. We'll talk about what these changes mean for your business and explore what you should be thinking about as you plan for the future. Now, we'll also have time at the end for questions. I feel like this topic arouses a lot of questions, and we're really going to lay the groundwork. So save your questions for the end. We'll have about 10, 15 minutes. Okay, so we're going to get started. So Beth, so again, thank you for being here. Now, for those in the audience who may not be familiar with the AAFA, maybe just heard about it in passing, can you start by telling us a little bit about the organization and your role within it?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for asking me these questions today. I agree. They're really important and probably part of your daily business, whether you realize it or not. So I work for the American Apparel and Footwear Association. We're a national trade association of brands, retailers, manufacturers, everyone, all the way down, to the textile, all the way to what is sells in stores. So everything I'm seeing on the floor today, we have lots of brands and members. If you're not a member, we call you a future member. So please, we can check out here on the slide the QR code. We have over 350 member companies that represent like 1,100 name brands. So we really do represent the whole of the fashion industry. What I do and what we do, we're not the designers or the production guys. We're mostly policy, like trying to make sure that you can do your job and sell to various markets around the world. So we cover a lot of things: sustainability, trade, logistics, corporate and social responsibility, environmental issues, brand protection. We just did a counterfeit study that was released this week. So there's a lot of policy issues working with Congress and the administration that we work on. But we really rely on the brands and retailers to tell us the issues of the day that they're facing so that we can make sure or try to make sure that we have the best policies going forward. So you're successful and consumers get the clothes and shoes and everything else that they want.
So you would say that the American Apparel and Footwear Association is the voice of the industry in Washington?
Definitely. There's other associations that we work to really closely, retailers, textile folks, other footwear, but we really do encompass the whole of the industry, I would say.
And I think there's more information on the next slide too. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, those are our three pillars. So brand protection, supply chain, and manufacturing and trade, all the things that we kind of touch on. Me and my colleagues, we're a small association, there's like 25 of us, but we try to do a lot. In fact, most of my colleagues are in Long Beach, California right now at a product safety conference, so.
Nice, warmer than here. So let's get into it. If you go to the next slide, there's so much happening today with tariffs. We're constantly reading headlines about tariffs, reciprocal tariffs, retaliatory tariffs, temporary safeguard tariffs. It's a lot to keep track, even being within the industry. So, Beth, can you just help level set the room? Where are we today with tariffs, and what should our industry understand about the landscape today?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit and then we'll get to this slide. But truly, President Trump, he's a self-proclaimed tariff man. He loves tariffs. So, first and foremost, those aren't going away anytime soon. We do feel like, especially for our industry that already has really high tariffs on imports into the United States, that we're getting hit doubly, triply, quadruply hard. And I don't think a lot of folks realize that in Congress or the administration, because there are a lot of other industries and sectors that really have really low tariffs, either zero or less than 5%, where we definitely don't. So, the president has a lot of ideas surrounding tariffs and what their purpose is, whether that is to increase domestic manufacturing. Again, not certain in our sector, but in other sectors, whether it's national security issues, trying to reduce the deficit that we have, trade deficits with other countries, putting America first, right? Those are some of the things that he's definitely talked about as far as tariffs go. And then, of course, lowering our reliance on China. I'm sure you guys have been hearing about this for a long time, right? Under his first administration, and then with the pandemic. And still, however, there's definitely some of these tariff policies contradict that, and we can go into that a little bit more later. But it really is, it gets really complicated. And for us, when we hear the president over the summer talking about how he doesn't want to start making T-shirts and socks and sneakers here in the United States anymore, but yet the tariffs still remain really high on our products, and we aren't seeing a surge of domestic production, it really makes us question, what this is really about. And it gets really hard because, of course, those tariffs are something that U.S. companies are paying, right? Not those foreign countries, no matter how much he says they are.
And the consumer.
And then in the end, it's the consumer. Mm-hmm. So, before I think this presidency, he had about 25%. Sorry, just looking at my notes here. The average duty rate for our sector exceeded 25%.
And is that, when you say our sector, is that that's just apparel?
Apparel and footwear.
Apparel and footwear,
but,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, same with apparel, because I think the average was like around 14%. So, we have, right now it's over 25%, and in some cases even higher. Our free trade agreement partners aren't spared from this either.
Yeah.
Central America, Canada, Mexico is a little bit, but, others around the world too that we have free trade agreements with still paying. So we have these reciprocal tariffs that came on this year, but we also have tariffs from Section 301 investigations. So that's China that we saw in his first administration. Nicaragua was just announced and enacted. 232s on aluminum and steel. And if you're not paying attention to aluminum and steel, you should, because it's also on derivatives. So I'm looking around the room. If you have like the eyelets on your where your laces are,
oh, wow,
you're gonna have to think about that. But other things, right? So if you're, for this group, bra straps have metal in them. That if that's aluminum or steel, I mean, maybe not, but underwire, those things, like, you have to think about that and what that tariff's going to be on top of the MFN, on top of wherever it's coming from, that reciprocal rate. So it gets really expensive, and it gets really, really technical and detailed. So if anything, I don't want to scare you guys, but I'm here to educate. I'm here to ask for your advocacy help, right, in Washington and with the administration. But I also really want you to go back and really thank your customs people. Those customs and compliance folks, whether they're brokers, whether they're in-house teams, they're dealing with this every day, and it's changing every day for them. So, give them a hug or a high five because they're doing really important work. So I think, it's really one of those things that we're not going to see go away anytime soon. And that's where this chart comes into. The next question I think you might have is the SCOTUS case. So
with everything happening and tariffs, and there is a case out there with the Supreme Court. They're getting ready to rule, and they could decide whether a president can use emergency powers to impose broad sweeping tariffs. Because I think usually tariffs have to get passed by Congress, and these were not. So this case is determining, can these powers be enacted? So for those of us in the apparel and retail industry, what is at stake with this case? If it goes one way and they rule he can't do this, what does that mean? And if they say he can, what does that mean?
Yeah, so I'm sure you're all watching this closely. I mean, every opportunity that we think the Supreme Court might make a decision, we're all watching. It's called SCOTUS Blog. If you're not watching SCOTUS Blog, you should, because it's really interesting. It's the reporters, the media, telling you exactly what the Supreme Court is doing that day.
And how often is that? Is that once a week, once a month?
It depends. Right now they're on a break.
Of course.
Have a little recess, yes. So we thought, January, let's just say it was January 9th. I can't remember. It was a Friday. That was the first time that we thought the Supreme Court could rule on these cases. And there was like 10,000 people on SCOTUS blog, I think. It was insane. Like, no one's ever heard of this before, but everyone was on just waiting to see, is today decision day, opinion day? And it wasn't. So then we had a few more. Now they're on a little break. The next day it could happen is February 20th. Okay. So
watch out for that date.
And then a couple of days after that. It doesn't mean that they will. I mean, usually, like, the Supreme Court, you'll get decisions by the end of June, but they did rush this case, right? They heard consolidated arguments, oral arguments in November on these two cases. Everyone's waiting with bated breath. The longer it takes, the feeling of, like, the fact that they're gonna deem these AIPA tariffs, unconstitutional and issue and say refunds must be issued, people are just getting nervous.
Yes.
Because the longer it takes, right? So, the Supreme Court could say all or part of these AIPA tariffs are illegal. I think, I'm not a lawyer, but lawyers in DC, they're all over the place on this. I think there's definitely a good feeling that they will strike down. However, will they actually opine on refunds? And if they do, what does that look like?
So let's say they strike them down. What happens the next day? Are all of the tariffs, reciprocal tariffs that were put in place, deemed illegal? And then what does the new tariff look like?
Yeah, so I think, again, I'm not a lawyer, so we'd have to kind of really look at the case. But say they strike them down, they say importers get refunds. That's going to be a process. It's going to take a while. Customs and Border Protection knows how to issue refunds. They've actually implemented electronic refunds as of, I think tomorrow. All the refunds going forward will be electronic. So I think everyone's kind of planning that this might actually happen. I don't think the administration's gonna make this easy for importers. I don't think you're gonna get this refunds, within a timely manner. I could be wrong, but I think there's a lot, that's gonna take place, and I do think they'll make it harder for importers. However, you really should be paying attention, right? Making sure that you're looking at your customs folks are looking at their customs reports on and knowing exactly how much they're due back in case these are struck down. But the other thing is, if you do get refunds, please don't spend this money. Please hold on to it because of this chart up here. The president and his cabinet have said several times that if the Supreme Court does strike down AIPA, he will use these other measures here to make sure that he's still tariffing you. So the ones that he can use quite quickly, we've already seen 232s and 301s. Those take a while because there's reports, there's oversight, all these things. But the last two there, Section 122 and Section 338, those ones can be done without congressional approval, without any reports, and quite quickly. I think the one that folks are looking at the most is Section 122. So it could be a tariff up to 15%. So countries like Vietnam that have 20% right now, they'd get a little bit of break. But others that have 10%, maybe they go up to 15. That's only for 150 days, but Congress could extend it. They could approve it. And right now, he has the majority in both the House and the Senate. So while there's plenty of Republicans that do not like these tariffs, they aren't really pushing back too much against the president. So maybe they would give him an extension. But my point being, if you do get refunds from AIPA, please make sure that around the corner, these tariffs are coming and you will have to pay in some shape or form until he's done with this administration, until there is a new administration.
So it's likely that the consumer isn't going to see any sort of refund.
No, I mean, it's the importer of record would get it, and I can't speak for brands or retailers on how they would go from there. I know a lot of brands and retailers, our members, are still trying not to pass that on to consumers. They have, but they're trying to make deals with other parts of their businesses around the world, with their suppliers and vendors. And not really raise prices, but of course, at the end of the day, they have to, right?
And we're seeing it in the data. Like prices have been ticking up in apparel since May. we started to see about 1 to 2%, and then in the fall accelerated to about 3 to 6%. And we're forecasting continual price growth for the next 2 years. So we're not seeing that in those inflation numbers where it's 12, 14% ASP growth, but definitely a long tail that we are anticipating for price increases. So now let's talk about just some of the aftermath of all of this, right? Let's say tariffs stay. There's been so much chaos. Over the past decade, we've definitely seen a shift in sourcing. So we've watched brands steadily diversify away from China. You talked about issues in the first administration. We've kind of been seeing this in the industry. We've seen an expansion into regions like Vietnam, India, Indonesia. But this past year definitely felt different. It was more chaotic. It was more abrupt. With so much uncertainty, it seemed like no country was truly safe under this Trump 2.0. We saw some sourcing plans change overnight. So from your perspective, has the global sourcing map actually shifted in a meaningful way this past year? Are we finally seeing a real redistribution of manufacturing power towards new regions, or are we just seeing some weight being shifted around?
Yeah, if we could go, I don't think it's the next slide.
Slide 6.
Yeah, next, one more, 2 more, sorry. Yeah, there we go. All right, so we pulled this data in a nice little chart for you guys. This is this year through October. Wow. So data is always behind a couple of months, but if you remember the government shutdown in October, that put it far behind even more. So I think, this is at least a month old, but I think the point remains that China is still number one. And so, at least by volume, right? They did have a 24% decline year over year, but they're still 28%.
But they're market. 2 times as large as the second largest is Vietnam. Right. Interesting. Right. Wow.
And China's huge, right? As a country, they can do everything there, right? They can do it well. They can get it to you quickly. The capacity is still there, especially as folks have tried to move out. I think there's still capacity that they could bring. But yeah, you're right. Vietnam is up 19%, but still not anywhere close to China. And then going even further down, Bangladesh, India, Cambodia. So right, the rest of Asia still trailing. And then of course the Americas, where we're always trying to do more, but with really strict rules of origin, even with free trade partners, it's difficult to do a lot in those countries, which is a shame since they're in our backyard.
So that brings up a great question about domestic manufacturing, and you mentioned this before. I think one of the catalysts for these tariffs was to bring production back to the U.S., or at least that was just the claim for a lot of them. Are you seeing this? Is it practical for manufacturing to return in a meaningful way? And even just thinking about you guys as in the intimates and swim industry, you need to work with partners that have specialty in terms of cutting and fabrication. It's not just a basic T-shirt. There's a lot of art that goes into the science of this. So is there an opportunity for domestic? We're not seeing it as much. Is there room for it? Does it make sense?
I still think when you look at the numbers, at least the trade data, it's about 3%, is domestic. And I saw an article a couple days ago, February 2nd, in a Wall Street Journal, talking about domestic manufacturing, like writ large, right?
Yeah.
And saying that, tariffs have just boosted companies' like costs, right? Especially for materials that they have to import. And this is really true for, I think, our industry, right? We don't have the factories, we don't have the machinery, and we don't have some of the yarns and fabrics that would go into intimates and swimwear. Like, I'm not a designer, but I'm not out there swimming in cotton bathing suit, right? Like, I'm not running, in cotton, right?
Yeah.
I want materials that wick and do what they're supposed to do, right? So I think that's one thing. The president's not looking at our industry. He's already said that, right? He's trying to bring back like real manufacturing, whether that's keeping autos here, semiconductors, chips, those kinds of things, those kind of manufacturing. But the numbers still aren't there because, He's put tariffs on things like machinery, aluminum and steel that you need to even bring up a factory online. Not to talk about the labor shortage that we have in the United States, right? Even if we did have enough folks that wanted to work in manufacturing or cut and sew or what have you in the United States, especially in our industry, we just don't have them. And then we're not, we have an immigration problem. I'll just leave it there. But there's a lot of factors, right? Wages are higher. There's a lot of things that aren't bringing back domestic manufacturing, especially in our industry. But there are companies that are making it work, at least for a small part. Maybe it's their high-end stuff, or maybe it's like they just have really good relationships or small batches, right? Small volumes. We have a whole subsect of our association that does government contract work. Under the Berry Amendment, you have to use American-made products for the U.S. military. So that's something we want to grow, but there's still lacks incentives for us to even do that. And so we're trying to work within the congressional process too, to be like, okay, this is a great place to start. This is an actual national security concern. Yes, we want to make sure we have boots and all the things that our military needs in case something happens. Even personal protective equipment, right? PPE during the pandemic. All those things, there's just not that desire to give those, whether it's tax breaks or other incentives. I mean, we produce a lot of cotton in the United States, a lot. We export most of it, right? So it's not that we don't have these things already around. It's just the incentives aren't there. There's lots of factors, I think. We'd love to build that up, but it's never going to be what it used to be, and I don't think that's a great way to look at it either. We don't want it to be 100% domestic, but we'd love it. We'd love it to grow.
Are you starting to see, because over the past decade, we've just heard so much about the shuttering of so many domestic factories. And some are thriving. I think of Ferrara as one, who's doing really well. Are you starting to see the reverse, where we're starting to see them open up again, or we're still not even there yet? Is it slow? Is it starting? Are you starting to see it on the horizon, or we're?
Yeah, I mean, I hear a little bit more about it. Companies wanting to do more. I don't know if propping up a factory necessarily. It's a lot of capital.
Yeah.
And a long time to do that, right? You don't just build a factory overnight. So even when you hear Apple or some of these other big tech companies saying they're going to do more investments, even with the countries that we've made these deals with, that takes years, right? To build up a factory and then to get all the things you need for it. So I think it's small and steady. And I feel like every time someone gets a little, we'll still have a few that close down, it's just, it's unfortunate. But until we really look at, especially for our industry, why these things really can't happen, what policies are blocking it, there's many, but what policies are blocking it, I think, and that's one of the things we're trying to do with this administration, is really show them not only how clothes and shoes are just, they're not a luxury, they're a necessity that Americans need. And they need to be at affordable prices, right? But we also need to make sure that they can get inputs if you really want them to build here. They can get the machinery, they can have the labor force and the skill set to make all the wonderful things that you guys make. They have an idea in their head, and the education is just way behind.
And what comes to mind too is, I think, was it Louis Vuitton? They opened up the factory in Texas, and it's not up to the quality of the brand, and they're struggling because it's not the same as the Parisian craftsman. So that's a great example of just trying to replicate and nurture something here, and it's just it can't be done, or not yet, at least.
Right.
Okay.
My daughter's going to a sewing camp this summer. That's just signed her up, so I'm trying to get people interested.
She's the future. So I think, do we have are we at 2:30?
No.
Are we at?
We were at 2:30.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Because we wanted to, before we just asked the closing question and turned it over to you guys, I wanted to just briefly touch on sustainability. So it feels like COVID, the tariff chaos of this past year pushed sustainability and so many other priorities to the back burner. Responsible production and ensuring strong conditions for people actually making apparel and other goods. So from your perspective, Beth, as brands and retailers still, are they genuinely focused on these commitments, or have you seen, I feel like I've definitely seen one, a bit of a shift as companies scramble to respond to fast changing tariff policies? And even just a follow-up question, looking ahead, how can the industry continue to invest and nurture sustainable practices and worker well-being when sourcing teams are just constantly navigating explosive, dynamic, ever-changing rules and policies?
No, it's a great question, and it's not in my portfolio, but I did come prepared, and I'm happy to put you guys in touch with our sustainability folks. But, with this administration, we're definitely seeing rollback of regulations on environmental and climate change things, right? That happens traditionally when Republicans take office, right? And then they turn around when Democrats take office. But while that happens, these supermajority Democratic states have inserted themselves even more. And so while I think, yes, the big words that flash across everyone's minds all the time is tariffs, the sustainability teams for brands and retailers should not be overlooked either, because they're dealing with a lot right now. For instance, the Responsible Textile Recovery Act of 2024 in California, SB 707, extended producer responsibility. If you're not paying attention to that, you need to, even if you're not based in California. I'm sure you sell in California. And so this is a law that requires producers and importers of textiles to take responsibility for the end-of-life management, right? So textile waste of apparel.
Oh, wow.
And they really do have to join together and fund a producer responsibility organization, or a PRO, and ensure that all products are collected, repaired, reused, and recycled after use.
Wow.
This is huge. This is California. This is spreading like wildfire across all states. What we're trying to do is make sure that it's the same in all states, because we'd love to have a federal policy. Like, if this is the way we're going, a federal policy would trump all state ones, and then you'd have consistency across states. However, that's not going to happen under this administration or with this Congress. So you really need to watch what's happening, or what has happened in California, because other states are looking at it and going full force. So we've worked with Cal Recycle and the National Retail Federation to prop up a producer responsibility organization called Textile Renewal Alliance. California Retailers Association. But Cal Recycle must choose who is going to run this PRO, and we're hoping it's us, along with NRF and CRA, because we feel like we have a good handle on what needs to be done and how to do it. There are extended producer responsibility programs in packaging already that you might be familiar with, but for textiles, this is the first in the United States. It's already happened in Europe, but it's the first in the United States.
At a very high level, can you explain what that looks like?
Yeah, so you have to give a lot of money into this organization. You have to register with the PRO by July 1 of this year. And if you're not, you need to. And this is going to be harder for smaller brands, because it's going to be just another thing that you either have to have someone on staff do or pay someone to do. You can't escape it, because you will get fined, and you will get fined heavily every day. But this is basically you have to collect some data first, compliance requirements. I mean, This is just like anything else you do in the compliance space.
And this is for any brand selling in California. You don't have to be based in California.
Yeah, right. So it's everyone, right? Because how do you not have consumers in California? It's huge, right? Especially for your intimates and swimwear, right? So again, this is not part of my portfolio, but I'm happy to put you in touch. You can look at textilerenewalalliance.org for more information. My colleague just testified this week in Washington about the same thing, Washington State. So Washington State's looking at it. I think Minnesota's looking at it. New York is looking at it. I'm sure you've heard of the Fashion Act too. That's other things we're looking at. how brands are going to be made responsible for textile waste. How can we make sure that things are actually recycled? There is not a lot of recycling, if any, in the United States. It's expensive to prop that up. That's a whole new industry, right? And if we don't do it here in the United States, we ship it around the world, where does it end up? Landfills and beaches, and it's just, so we're really trying to make sure that we have all the infrastructure here, either in the United States or close enough, right? So we're not shipping it, because I know for sustainability folks, right, you don't want to also like raise your carbon footprint by shipping textile waste around the world, right? Like it's just, it doesn't make sense logically. But it's coming whether you like it or not. I mean, it's already here, but you will have to start reporting. You will start having collect all that data, or you will be fined. And they know who you are. So sign up as quick as you can. And if you want my card after this, I'm happy to give it to you. But I don't think, even if you're just focusing on tariffs or something else in your business, like you can't ignore that sustainability, ESG, all these things are still happening. They're just happening at the state level, maybe for now, but they're still just as important as ever. And then if you're selling into Europe, of course, that's a whole nother ball game.
And now, then there's tracking now in Europe. I don't know when that's starting, but you have to track the RFID of each item. I think it is, right? Yeah. Your product passport. Yep.
And that's not just, I mean, that's sustainability, but forced labor, I mean, that's never going away either, right? And good, we don't want forced labor in our supply chains, but we are seeing an uptick in enforcement by CBP. They took a little bit of a, seemed like a break, but they're enforcing. They've issued a few more withhold release orders in our industry and not in our industry. So expect that too. Just, you really need to know where your stuff's coming from if you don't already. And you need to be prepared to like answer a lot of questions.
And even the headlines this past year of premium brands, was it Cucinelli or Loro Piana, where they, were under fire about some practices with their production. So definitely seeing more of a closer look on this. And I would say even more of a reason to join the AAFA, because if I feel overwhelmed in these conversations, and I'm sure you guys do as well, and your teams, they're a great partner to have, keep you informed, and an advocate for the industry. So before we turn it over for Q&A, just, a question just to kind of wrap it up. So as we look kind of past the immediate noise, tariff uncertainty, policy, what would you say in the next 3 to 5 years, what does a smart long-term sourcing strategy look like? And I know that's a loaded question, but thinking about the audience, right? Intimate swimwear, where we know fit, fabric, innovation, and technical capacity really matter. Like where's the puck going? What should they be keeping their eye on?
Yeah, I mean, we know you guys are always looking for ways to limit your risk, right? Trying to be flexible and agile, find the best suppliers. We know that doesn't happen overnight. A lot of brands tell me that, they try to have suppliers that are in several different regions. So if they needed to kind of move things around, it's not as difficult. I've heard brands tell me that they're trying to get their suppliers to really look at the Western Hemisphere more, to bring some of those technical fabrics to like Central America or Mexico. So that, they can have those options too when they need to be more flexible and agile. And then it also, right, being so close, speed to market, but also being so close for your ESG goals as well. But it's going to be a question continuously, like, where's capacity? Where's capability? How do I find that when my competitors are doing the exact same thing I'm trying to do? And I know you guys all have different answers depending on your company, but it's going to continue to be frustrating, I think. You've all learned from the pandemic. I think you just keep reminding yourself that you've learned how to do this, and try to just keep thinking about and moving around. No place is safe, in my opinion, right? This president is going to continuously tell you one moment, like earlier this week, India's a great partner. Yeah, we're going to put lots of tariffs on India. get out of China, but it's more expensive to do business in India right now. Like, so there's this shifting. It's never an easy bet on the tariff side. And then that doesn't even, what are your costs? What are the labor issues? What are the geopolitical things happening, right? There's coups sometimes in these countries. There's other forced labor concerns. There's just the shipping, the logistics, right? So I know about that. The administration and Congress doesn't. And so that'll be my plug for any advocacy. You guys want to come to Washington, D.C.? They love when a brand comes in and says, hey, I'm with so, and they're like, because they know you. It's easy to talk about what you do because they know these brands, they wear them, right? And they want to hear about it. So, regardless of, how you feel about politics, it's really important to advocate on behalf of yourself and educate, because these are lawmakers that have never done your business before. A lot of them have never been in a business. My previous congressman was a car salesman. So he actually ran a business, still does. But so I feel like I could talk to him like he understood business, right? He didn't understand apparel, but there's not a lot of members of Congress that have even run a business before. So it's really important to just start with the basics and educate. I'm happy to do that for you. That's what I'm supposed to do. But it helps me tell your story better if you're beside me, and just really sharing the details and showing how many American jobs too that you support, whether that's directly or indirectly, because I think that's also how we put America first, right? Is showing, okay, you may make the product somewhere else, but all your design, all your logistics, your headquarters, all that really that knowledge and service, that skill set is American jobs. And so I think it's really important. Sorry, I'm a little...
No,
I
think
lobbyist. This is what I do. I have to drum people up to get, the advocacy on it.
So, just on that theme of longer term thinking and strategy, I don't know if you can answer this, but I'm just going to throw the question out there. When we look at the tariffs that were set in the first round of this administration, they were kept when the next administration came in. Any thought as to the next, presidency to take office? Do you think they would keep these now really inflated tariffs, or?
Right. So I do think, again, it depends on who we would get. I do think there's a lot of, Republicans that feel and understand trade and feel like we shouldn't be tariffing our allies. We shouldn't be tariffing the EU. Now, we have issues with the EU, but, as one example, but we really shouldn't be going after Canada, shouldn't be going after our friends if the real problem is some of these other countries like China and what have you. So I really do think there would be a shift depending on the country.
Okay.
As long as we don't codify these, right? As long as Congress does not make these tariffs law,
okay,
it's easy to just pull them down. At any moment, the president, wrote on Truth Social that he's going to lower the tariffs on India earlier this week, right? It hasn't happened yet, but he has that ability because he's using AAFA, the Emergency Powers Act. But if that was codified, if Congress, passed a law, that would be a lot harder to take off.
Gotcha.
So I do think there's hope for that to come off.
And there's no plan that will happen and it will go to Congress.
There are bills out there, but I really and they're trying to placate either Trump or they really do believe in tariffs. I don't know, but I don't think they'll be codified anytime soon.
Okay.
If there's a chance, you're all going to hear from me, and I need you in Washington because it's really hard to undo a law.
Yes. Okay.
Even if it's bad.
So, I could keep going. I have so many questions, but I want to turn it over to the audience. It's a really complicated topic that we all need to really stay on top of and be aware of. So I'm going to throw it over to the audience.
First question.
I have a lot of questions. So the first question that I have is on the tariffs, and you talked about steel and aluminum, and said that would that be addition to the 25 plus whatever that we have on apparel, even though we don't necessarily denote those items on our care labels?
Yeah, so that's one thing. Everything stacks on top of each other, which is really annoying. I mean, there are a few countries that we've made deals with, like the EU and Japan, where they have non-stacking provisions, and few of them have been able to make deals on steel and aluminum. But these derivatives, yeah, I mean, CBP has a really good team who knows what textile and apparel is supposed to look like, right? Like I'm sure you or your teams have dealt with them. They know, like, especially classification, so they know, and they're looking at, okay, could this potentially have any steel or aluminum in it? And have they added that to their customs bill, to put it, simply. And that's a real problem, I think, because a lot of folks aren't really paying attention to that. And, it's just one extra thing that and they're going bonkers with these derivatives. Like I submitted comments about travel good, like suitcases. I'm like, you can't just put this whole tariff line and assume that all luggage has steel or aluminum in it. It might, but it might not. And this has nothing to do with national security. This is luggage, right? We're not hurting U.S. steel and aluminum.
Luggage could carry something. Bras typically don't.
Right. But like,
Well, not national security.
but so like, yeah, everything stacks on top of each other. And so it can make your tariff bill really high if you're not paying attention. And Customs and Border Protection have really good teams, and they know, and they want the revenue because now they look good in front of the president. Like, we are making more money for this president, and we want to keep doing that. So they're going to look at everything.
Next question, which I forgot the second one, but this on the sustainability and the California.
Oh, can you put your mic closer?
On the sustainability and the California Act, they're going to have every brand in America join this thing that you have to pay for, and what happens with that money? What are you getting for that?
That money is going to help make sure that the textiles either repaired or recycled.
How are they going to do that?
Exactly. I mean, yes, but it is law. We've raised that with them. Like, how are you going to do this?
How are they going to know if I'm living in California and I decide to throw out my panties?
To add on to Janet's question, how are we going to find out? Like, who's going to tell us?
Oh, Cal Recycle. Like, they know who is. They have a running list of what's happening, and quite frankly, your competitors are also going to make sure you're on those lists, right? They're not going to be like, I'm not getting, paying all this and making sure my competitors aren't either. So like everyone's going to tattle on each other and making sure. So that's why it's important that you join the pro ahead of time and start collecting your data. Otherwise, the fines are going to be outrageous.
Unless you decide as a brand not to enter your goods through Long Beach or through California when you bring them in from wherever, and to sell to Californians.
Yeah, I don't know. Can you do that?
Why? We do not ship to California.
But can you not sell in California?
If you're on a direct-to-consumer business, you don't have to sell or ship to anybody in California, just like you don't have to ship or sell to anybody in Europe.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
Fair. I mean, I guess so. Again, this isn't my. I don't know if it's. I don't know if that's actually like. I hear what you're saying, but I don't know if that's actually feasible.
Because with all of California's terrible efforts in their management of their state, how on earth are they going to actually do this for the rest of the country?
That's what we've tried to explain to them too. Is that it's gonna be a nightmare for them, and that's why we were like, you really need to do like a feasibility study. This is like what's happening this year is just the first step of many, right? So there's years of this happening. I just don't want you to come away from this thinking like I'm exempt. Like you're not, and we're also trying to make sure that companies that are just this is before de minimis was taken away, but that everyone who was coming in and selling to any California consumer, that it was fair. Like everyone had the same level playing field. So if you're not selling into California, but Washington's coming, all these other states are coming too. And I don't know how you would get around that. Maybe, I guess you could, but that would seem like a really big loss to not be able to sell into California for swimsuits. Well, that's what we're trying to do, is make sure that there's one pro.
Oh, you
But
want
that we don't know exactly if there's how that's going to work.
Can you just
Yeah.
tell everyone again the website for the?
Oh, yeah, sure. Let me grab it real quick so I give it to you the right way. Yeah, it's textilerenewalалliance.org. So there's a monthly newsletter and upcoming webinars, which will cover producer obligations, compliance deadlines, and next steps in the implementation process. It's textiles, yeah. Sure, textilerenewalalliance.org. So again, this is years coming down the line, but you need to start now because there's some reporting stuff that's happening this summer. And you don't want to be caught off guard. And like I said, I think folks are going to start making sure that everyone's on these lists. They have a good handle of it now, I understand, but it really is, you're going to want to pay attention to this because, like I said, it's going on in other states. It's going to keep snowballing. And we really do want to make sure, or we're hoping that this pro that's set up in California will be the one that's chosen for Washington, that's chosen for other states, so that you don't have all these different ones happening, but that's not our decision.
Yeah, so when it comes to recycling efforts, just end of life, we've seen that a lot of our household goods that we think we're recycling aren't actually being recycled. So has that been a thought when it comes to implementing this, if what we already think we're trying to do good in hasn't really paid off?
Yeah, because it's expensive to recycle stuff. My county, I live in Virginia, my county doesn't even collect wine bottles anymore. Glass, I should say. For me, it's wine bottles, but they don't collect glass anymore. Because it's so expensive, right? Like, what? I mean, I grew up thinking about recycling glass and cans and paper and everything. So I'm still, putting it or bringing my glass to the thing. But yeah, you're right. I don't know. And the point, I don't know if again, we tried really hard to make this a better bill, and we did get it to be better, but it could have been better, right? Because it really did need to make sure that, again, at the end of the day, what you want to happen is actually going to happen. And they don't have any money either to do this. So again, this is why the pro has to put the money up and all this. But yeah, it's a lot of money, and at the end of the day, are things going to be recycled? Are people going to stop, consuming so much? Are these efforts really, or is it just a way to, get money out of brands? Yeah, I mean, it is. I don't think we want to say that to the lawmakers in California, but my colleagues were much more diplomatic about it. But yeah, I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, is this really going to do what it says? I mean, I feel like this is the same with a lot of policies, right? At the end of the day, are we really stamping out forced labor in Xinjiang, right? China? Probably not. I mean, I don't want it in our supply chains, but is it really doing what we think it's doing? I mean, China's a communist country. They're going to do what they want to do. Sovereign, all these things. So we can look at all different kinds of policies. Are they really doing what they're supposed to at the end of the day?
Hi, Beth. I have a question not related to the tariffs, but related to the organization, AAFA. I'm a founder of a small brand, and I really want to be a part of your organization. I see so much value. However, the fees are quite high, and I was wondering if you differentiate the companies like Nike, Alo Yoga, and startups that try to make a difference and make more ethical underwear for women in terms of the fees for acceptance.
Yeah, our membership department really takes all of those things into account as far as, and the dues are based on how big you are versus how small you are. And they really do try to work with you. So I would still reach out and try to do that. And I can give you my colleague's name. We see everyone as future members, and we don't want to turn anyone away because of those things. We want you to have access to all the materials that we have. And we do on our website, we do still have a lot of things for non-members that are available, but we want to make sure that you have the ability to join if you are able. Because we know everything's more expensive these days, especially with the tariffs. So we do try to help. Hi.
Hi, I have a comment and a question. Hi, I'm Mickey. I'm a sustainability advisor for my day job, and I also am starting a sustainable lingerie brand. But just to contribute to the conversation of SB 707, I've been involved in some of the conversations, worked on a project with California. So just to hopefully help assuage some fears with that law in terms of how the pro is coming into play and how everything is coming into play. It's going to be a years long process. There's a dollar amount threshold for brands. So if you're selling under a certain amount, I don't remember what that amount is off the top of my head, but if you're under a certain amount, you will be exempt from fees. Also, years 1 and possibly 2 are just reporting, and then there'll be fees. I believe things may have changed, so don't quote me on this, but fees will also happen through eco-modulation. So in the early years, fees will be lower, they'll become higher as you continue on. So it is, you're completely correct. It is coming, but just like anyone in the audience who's listening and is kind of freaking out, it'll be a process. And there are some things happening in California to work on textile recycling pilots. So in the city of Los Angeles, they're working to go zero waste. So there are some efforts being made to try to figure it out. And yeah, the whole point of the fees is to help fund building infrastructure to facilitate the recycling. So that's my comment to add to SB 707 and all of that. And then my question for you is, in terms of tariffs, I think you maybe answered this in answering one of Janet's questions, but in terms of the EU, I've heard conflicting information about whether or not, because I know at least at last, it was that the EU and the US has struck a deal for 15%. Is that on top of, or is that replacing what has historically been with tariffs from the EU?
It's the higher of, I think. I'd have to go back and look at my notes. We don't import a lot from the EU. I mean, yes, there's some luxury products, of course, right, from Italy and France and such. But so that's, I think, probably why our industry isn't super applauding. I mean, it's great to see non-stacking. We wish it was non-stacking with the countries that we do more business with in our industry. But yeah, I believe it's the higher of. So if it was, so it's always going to be, it'll be 15% unless, but then remember there's other tariffs too for the aluminum and steel. They could possibly retaliate against some things if we keep up this, fight with them that seems to every other day we have one with the EU. So yeah, it's definitely, they got a better deal than other countries for sure, but it's still a high tariff for us, right?
Thank you. Hi. We've been through the drama of tariffs since the first term of Trump, and it's been the Democrats took over, and it's just been capped. Some of them continue till today. My question is about this: the reciprocal tariffs actually work? Do they help the U.S. in any way? Because the reason I'm asking this because some investors could simply go from those countries that we're pushing back against and go to FTA countries and build new factories and ship from those to the US. So are they really working?
No.
They're not. Okay. That's actually the end consumer is really the one who's getting. Plus, it creates a lot of instability for brands and manufacturers alike.
Yeah, and like I said, it's not overnight to build a factory, and no one now feels there's any certainty to go anywhere and build a factory. Well, even if they wanted to go to an FTA partner, there's lots of things stopping them. Not just the tariffs. It could be the geopolitical stuff. Can they build a factory in said country? How long will that take? Do they have the workforce? Do they have the materials? Are the rules of origin for textiles and apparel really strict under the FTA? The answer is yes. So it's not easy to move to an FTA country.
That's true, but I know for a fact, that's happening. And from fabric, from like thread till the end. And, it's something that is, I'm just like wondering, is really tariffs are working? Sometimes I,
Now,
I feel like the impact is just
he's
on,
generating a lot of money. So
sure.
he would say they are working.
But like it's like really changing the geography, but the investors could be different, like from other countries. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, I mean, the investors are probably also weary of things changing day by day. So
yeah.
where they would have maybe gone and saw an opportunity, I mean, I wouldn't
Yeah.
go
All right.
anywhere. I would be really nervous.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
I just have one quick question. So I'm wondering, this California thing that it's got, many people riled up and excited and confused. How would anyone know this other than through the AAFA?
Well, a lot of associations are trying to get it out there in their memberships, and then a lot of other organizations that care about textile waste. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't know outside of California if a lot of media is really picking up on it to get it out there to folks. So I think that's why it's really important that you do reach out. I think our association, our newsletter, I think can go to anyone. You don't have to be a member. So you can even sign up just to kind of get some ideas of what's happening. But you really do have to pay attention to like the trade, right? So if you're not reading, I'm not trying to plug anyone in particular, but if you're not reading Sourcing Journal, just Style, where they're actually talking about these things, if you're only looking at like, CNBC or CNN or Fox News, like you're not going to hear about these things, but you have to read the trade news and if you're not getting it from your association, but really the expertise is with an association or a consulting firm or a law firm that's really looking at these things to make sure that you are in compliance, because you don't want to bill at the end of the day on some of this stuff, right?
Okay, thank you. This has been very enlightening.
I'm sorry, I'm always bad news.
No, we knew it was going to be a really interesting conversation. Again, there's a lot going on, and we need to be sure that we're staying informed. So, Beth, thank you so much. This was outstanding. What a great conversation. I definitely learned a lot. I think there's a lot to take away. And, another plug for the AAFA. Like you said, there's a free newsletter, or if you're interested in joining, definitely reach out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.